title of today's Dharma talk is Elation and Depression. Isn't that what I put down? So, elation, we all know what that is, and we all know what a kind of emotional state that we would call depression. So both of those, there's a big contrast there, of course. What do we do with that? What do we do with the mind that for a while is doing really well, and we're feeling really good, and we're feeling really up, and we're smiling, and everything's going well. And sometimes we even look at it and we think, I don't deserve this. I haven't done anything to feel this good. I just feel really good. I'm not talking about smoking a little weed and feeling good. I'm talking about just, you just wake up and you just feel really good. No apparent reason. Don't even know if the moon is in your first house or what's going on. So it's a very interesting thing to inspect as a meditator. People who are not meditators do what? Anything that comes up, they when this is not an accusation of anything, it's just a description. People can do whatever they want. The whole world is not paying any attention to me at all, and that's fine. But there's a few people in this room, you're giving me permission to talk to you, and I'm talking to you based on many, many years of looking at the mind, looking at this mind, talking to other people about their minds, which is even more confusing or depressing. So what most of the world is doing, most people, without a spiritual path, without a path of awareness, without any way of strengthening the awareness, there isn't even any teaching in our society that says strengthen your awareness. It all says more or less, figure it out, get it figured out, plan your life, do this, look at this, take this course, take that course. You got to get an education. You should do this, you shouldn't do that. It's just a lot of shoulds and shouldn'ts, all based on what? Quite often it's somebody else that if we look at them, they're just as confused as we are, sometimes more so. Sometimes it's our parents. We look at them and think, why would I do what they're doing? They're not happy. They're covering up their life with this, that, or the other thing. Maybe, going to the bowling alley or drinking, whatever, or some other form of distraction that is called entertainment. So the sitting practice of meditation, in other words, training our mind, whether you're Buddhist or not, doesn't make a lot of difference. It makes some, but you can also train your mind without subscribing to any particular religion, Buddhism or anything else. Not really necessary, unless you think it is. And if you'll find out, if you sit down, hold very still, and do that a little short session we did this morning, sit down, hold very still, watch what moves. That's basically awareness practice. It's a combination of mindfulness, which is stability, and awareness, which is expanding the awareness. The Sanskrit word for that is shamatha vipassana. The English translation, freely translated, is mindfulness, awareness, mindfulness, mindful of the breath, coming and going, and awareness, that which begins to expand out of that apparent stability. So if you do this, if you stretch, exercise the awareness, like I said in the meditation instruction, the thinking process is already muscle bound. We already, overthink everything. If something happens, think. What should I do? What should they do? What do you think about what I'm thinking about? What you're thinking about what I'm thinking? What do I think about what you're thinking? It's just an endless back and forth of opinions about this and opinions about that. Not necessarily incorrect. That's why it makes it so challenging and difficult for us, is because a lot of times someone's comment or opinion about something has a lot of backup there as far as logic and reason, but it's never the big picture. Big picture is not about logic. It is not about thinking, processing, evaluating, judging, condemning, accepting, rejecting. It is that's why they call it a big picture. It doesn't even have a frame. It's that big. You can't even call it a big picture. We have to say something. That's what we say. But the other thing that all of you, those of you who have listened to me talk before, will hear me say, as I'm saying again, all evidence is partial. All evidence, anytime there is a proof, Something is happening and you have some kind of proof that, well, it's because they did this, or we need to blame them. We never have really a large view of that. That's why, quite often, it is kind of you could say it's kind of a cop-out to blame anybody. Blame yourself for anything, blame somebody else for something. As soon as you do, this is what happens when you blame yourself or others. All investigation ceases because they're to blame. It's that simple. Or I'm to blame, it's my fault, I did it. Don't do that. And when I say don't do that, do anything you want. I'm making a suggestion to you. Give it a little bit more space. Slow down. Give it a little bit more time to see what is fundamentally true so that you yourself can see what is true yourself. You don't ever have to ask me or anyone like me or anyone else, that you yourself will know. As Kobanchino Roshi, one of my teachers, said, get your own authority. And how do you do that? You look at the very nature of authority. You actually look at who says this is true and who says this is false. Look at that. When your own mind shows up as an opinion, something happens and you immediately produce an opinion about it. That's not exactly what we're talking about here. Fundamentally, there really isn't an authority, but that's for you to discover. So the elation and the depression, that contrast, that's what we quite often experience. Is we notice that we're doing pretty well for a while. Things are feeling good. We're feeling up. The world is supporting us. Our friends, our job, our relationships. Things are going well. We feel pretty good. And then sometimes right in the middle of that, this is kind of a clue to how really complicated this is. Sometimes right in the middle of everybody's doing well and happy and you're happy, and then all of a sudden it goes, it probably doesn't make that sound. I saw that eyebrow going there in the air there, Kevin, like Kevin's sitting there and then one eyebrow goes up like that. How long did you practice that in the mirror?
I learned it from my dad at a young age.
Oh.
We used to sit around the table and do it.
And trade eye winks.
Yeah.
Okay. What was I saying? Thank you. I was saying that. So we go down, and we can feel it, and what do? We start to, as soon as we start to feel that little, those little indications, those little signs of bad weather coming, we try to stop it. We don't want to stop it. We look around. What can I do? I don't want to go back to the doctor and take a bunch of drugs. Or maybe you do. Maybe I need to go get some drugs. You might want to do that too. So, and here, this is very important. Not about right and wrong. The right and wrong is the same polarity that causes the elation and the depression. It's the same kind of polarity. This whole teaching is about non-duality, or not two. Anytime we separate anything, we start on a microscopic scale in our own mind. We start a warfare. There's a little tiny skirmish in our mind that's going, there's that sound again. Back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. And you can't stop that because that's more warfare. But anytime you see something like that that's doing that, if you do anything, you set up another duality that brings those two things together. Follow me? And then you object to that. So we're right back to this. And then you can come the other direction. Or you can meet somebody that'll say, don't do that. Maybe it's a therapist. Don't do that. And then we set up another polarity. So it's like, hall of mirrors. What am I saying? I'm saying find out who you are. Don't take anybody's word for it. Don't take my word for it. Don't take anybody's word for it. Find out who you are. One of the ways, there might be other ways. Maybe skydiving will work. I don't know. It didn't for me. I know I didn't do it enough. But sit down and face the wall. Sit down in your home, in your garage, on your deck. Sit down and just look at something that's fairly nondescript, not much going on. Hold very still. Watch what moves. Because watching what moves, what will begin to move is the way the mind cranks up delusion, the way you get drawn into picking and choosing, pulling and pulling. And the thing that I think that is so hard to see about it is that you can't actually find an off switch. That's what we keep looking for, some way to stop it. And this is like the train's already been built, we already have the tracks, we have wheels, we have an engine, it's on its way, and then we want to stop it. It's not going to work. You have to go back and find out, how did this happen in the first place? The awareness practice will begin to take you back to the root, and the root of this is belief in a separate self. Belief that you are a solid being. You are not. Don't take my word for it. Find out. Find out. When you sit down, when emotions come up, try to see where those are coming from. Try to see if you can see who's having that. Look for the identity part of the awareness. And when you find it, just continue to look at it. Don't get rid of it, because that's more polarity. Don't accept it, that's more polarity, more subtle. And don't shut down on it or look away, because then it has a free-for-all in your, what we call, modern psychology calls your subconscious. So to go to the extreme, the difficult part of the elation depression is, of course, the depression. We go down and we start to go deeper and deeper, and sometimes it gets so bad and so insistent that it feels like we can't stand this anymore. Not everyone, but occasionally people become suicidal. They just feel so terrible. It's so horrible. Day after day after day of this, they just want to end this. And I would say if you have that situation happening, do as little as possible about it. For one thing, don't kill yourself. But the other thing is, be very careful how you get help with that. Try to look at it yourself. Try to bring, and of course I'm saying you have to be a meditator. It's not going to work. You can't just never meditate and try to do this, crank this up on the spot. So, and anything I say comes with the recommendation that you train your mind, which means hold still, watch what moves. That stretches the awareness and makes the awareness stronger, so that when you get up off the cushion and you go into what we call post-meditation or your everyday life, that you're, instead of meeting it with solid wall of thought patterns, ideas, opinions, judgments, I like them, I don't like them, that's not right, this is right, I shouldn't do this, I should do that, tapes all playing in the back from our culture, society, parents, so on and so forth, or out of hope and fear. Instead, we have this field of space or awareness where we're beginning to meet our life, meaning in the form of other people or events, looking in the mirror. We meet it with a sense of openness, which could be called space. Ego, self-centeredness, does not like this space. It's threatening. Ego wants to fill up the space with shields and masks and protective barriers, so the world won't get to something to us and harm us or destroy us or hurt us. And of course, the discovery through meditation practice, if you do enough of it, and if you work on it, you will find that that person, that being, that me, that personal pronoun that you're trying to protect is discontinuous. It's an astonishing discovery. Might even have a little elation there. To actually find that who you thought was a solid being is discontinuous. When the ego or the self-centered or the clamping part of the mind finds that, it wants to get help. But when the awareness has been freed up and has been, you could say, empowered. In other words, you sit down and you insist on being aware. You sit down, I call it voluntary discomfort. Anytime you go to meditate and sit down, face the wall, and look at nothing at all, it's uncomfortable. The downside is it's uncomfortable. The upside is you're looking at exactly what you need to look at in order to begin to see who you are, see who you really are, and understand what elation and depression are yourself. So you really understand that. If you really understand that, you will stop meddling not only with your own mind, trying to fix yourself, but you'll stop meddling with other people. You'll actually have respect for people's craziness. Not easy to do that. Very tempting to want to go in and make recommendations or suggestions to people out of fear or out of judgment, feeling like they're wrong or I need to stop them or so on and so forth. We even have suicide lines where people call in to say, I feel like killing myself, and then that person is trained to function with them in a certain way. And don't misunderstand, I'm not saying that's incorrect or wrong. Probably is very helpful. Who knows? But I would say yes.
How can you bring more awareness to what's behind the protection?
Paraphrase yourself.
How can I see more deeply into no self?
So no self is a concept, and you need to look at that part of your identity that feels like there is somebody. So when you sit down and face the cushion, or face the wall, sit down at the cushion, watch what arises, and don't push on it, don't pull on it, and don't shut down on it. The three poisons: don't push it away, aggression, don't draw it in with any kind of stories or explanations around it, or justifications, or causes and conditions, seeing where it came from or what it is, passion. And the other one is don't distract yourself or lock down or move away from it or go play golf. Not that there's anything wrong with golf. Play golf if you want. But bringing awareness to how that whole structure works, eventually you begin to see, you will see, the so-called or apparent person you think is having that experience. The lamination of the consciousness to a physical form in time and space, in apparent time and space, is very convincing. We look in the mirror, we see, I'm here. I'm somebody. I have a life. I wake up, I'm here, I go to sleep, I get up, I have some cornflakes. You probably don't eat cornflakes. Well, oatmeal. Oatmeal? What's your breakfast like?
Anything I can find that's not those two things?
No wonder you're a student of mine. So, the way we see that is just to be the part that might be missing from what I'm saying here is just to be very persistent about it and don't look for results. I mean, we can't help but look for results, of course, but don't put too much emphasis on that, because a result is from the point of view of awareness practice is like this. We found the result, and we're back to looking at a concept. It's very subtle. It's very subtle. It takes a lot of practice to be able to see when a thought pattern is actually preventing your awareness and when the thought pattern is actually functioning with the awareness. This is called vipassana, mahavipassana, great awareness. When the awareness and the thought patterns actually work together. This is when insight arises, and this one is when you no longer make any choices. If you're making choices based on plus and minus, good and bad, up, success and failure, this is called samsara, the constant spinning of this world of life and death, success and failure, gain and loss. More?
Not yet.
Lisa?
In a practical sense, can bringing awareness help moderate those swings between the polarities?
Yes, they would. They would. Until there's complete awakening, that's what will happen. This is why people do a mindfulness practice, because they realize, I'm starting to settle down. This is working for me. I feel more calm. I feel less warlike, or other comments like that. But it hasn't actually, it might have settled things down, it might have smoothed things over, but probably to the fundamental deception hasn't been seen yet, which is that there's a solid being. Because now there's a solid being who's doing pretty good. Now you've actually created a really good meditator. Yeah, you should try meditation, it really works great. Yeah, I feel so good now. I used to feel like crap. Now I feel like, well, I don't feel like crap, I feel really good. It's actually like crap with icing on it. Sorry, it's a terrible image. Food images this close to lunch are not good. So, Jigme.
Is depression a mask?
It can be, to use that concept, it could be a mask, but the source of the depression is probably unfindable. This is why when you try to go down into it and try to sort and find out why is it caused, we're looking for blame. Well, something we can blame for the depression. And what we really find is it starts to become a complete, well, you've seen the Matrix, you know, the actual reality of what's happening is just, you're not gonna figure that out. It's that kind of a situation. So it seems to be more expedient, to use, you know, to that kind of a description, to just go to the identity part of it. The part that thinks, because this is where we gather ourselves into a self that can win or lose or succeed or fail. We gather our consciousness, is called, quite often looks like a fist. We gather that into a self who's not gonna let go and not gonna give up and not going to, needs to be protected or needs to be promoted. Needs to be not be disrespected, all those different kinds of things that go with it. More?
How does depression look in the space of awareness?
Probably like a big stinky cloud. I mean, just to use the pictorial, it's just, you're not going to meditate it away. This is some of the direction that happens in the modern mindfulness awareness situation. I'm not taking anything away from someone who's teaching this. But it needs to go, really needs to go deeper than that. So we actually have to have the cloud, then we have to go down into that cloud. And that may take years. It's not gonna happen in 3 weeks, 3 years, 4 years. It might, because the causes and conditions that arise as each person, your particular, shall we say, karma, to use the fancy word, or actions, the actions that have brought about this being who is here, because you're not separate from all the lifetimes that have ever been lived. And no, as I've said before, I neither believe in reincarnation nor do I disbelieve in it. You don't need to take a position on something. I don't take a position on gravity either. Seems to work just fine no matter what I think about it. Follow me? No, you don't.
No, I don't. I'm trying.
I'll get back to you. Yes.
So, in the midst of this depression, you said you can't meditate it away.
Yes.
Then how do you hold your seat while still having to live under this cloud?
You just do it anyway. You just, it feels terrible, you just do it anyway. But don't do anything extra, don't do anything to cover it, don't do anything. I'm not saying you shouldn't have a cup of coffee, but I'm saying I wouldn't necessarily go in and cover it up with drugs. It's not that the drugs won't maybe smother that or take some of that away or convert that into some other kind of horrible feeling, which is quite often what happens with some of the drugs they use for that. So you have this and then you have all the terrible side effects. But I would say, give yourself a break. Don't do anything with it. But spend some time where you just stop moving, hold still. Don't call it meditation, call it cheesecake. But hold still. And do it for, when I say long periods, do it for an hour, 2 hours. Every day, it's not much, you have 24 hours in a day, at the last count. You know, pick one of those hours, 1/24 of the day. Sit down, hold still, look at the mind that continues to hold everything still that you can. You can't control much. I often say, I'm saying again, go look, you think you're in control? Think you're gonna get control? Go look in the mirror. And like we sometimes say, how's that working for you? Do you have the really nice big ears you always wanted? Or do you have a really beautiful, set of teeth? Maybe you do, but you didn't order them. You didn't make there's no, the identity part that is so much like a fist, protective, did not make this happen. You're a Buddha nature. To have some kind of a word, cause this, that, the causes and conditions. Your wisdom mind actually brought this about so that you could awaken. You may awaken now, it may be 300 years from now, maybe 20 minutes. Yes.
So just to continue with this, if you have this intense depression that seems to be lasting and lasting day after day, and you still have to function, do you recommend meditating through that for a period of time? But how to meet others that
Yeah.
see
well,
your depression?
What makes it so difficult is we have our society, our culture is so complicated and is so knotted up in so many ways. If we look, anywhere we look, we see this incredible intelligence we call human beings. Amazing. We're gonna go out there pretty soon and get in an electric car. Where did those come from? Did the Martians come and make those for us? Well, that's a rhetorical question. But it's incredible intelligence combined with this terrible stupidity that makes wars and kills whole millions of people out of somebody being really unhappy that happens to have a lot of charisma that's able to get a whole bunch of other people to put on robot suits. We see it everywhere. And so we have to start somewhere. So I say, you don't go out and carry protest signs if you want to. I'm not against that, but I'm saying before you take your own craziness out into the world and make more trouble, first unload the gun that's in the center of your chest. Sit down, unload that. We're all carrying this intense aggression. Quite often it's against ourselves, and then that doesn't work, so when we get out and then something out in our environment triggers that aggression, and suddenly all this aggression we haven't dealt with ourselves comes out towards the world. It's been going on for eons. Yes, sir.
We get a lot of feedback from media and people that are smart about depression.
I've heard about
How
this.
do we just be with that without actually making that our story? Because it's pretty easy to
Just do it. Just see that it's a story. You don't have to get rid of anything. If you see that it's a story, then it's just the story about depression. It's just a story about whatever, painkillers, oxycodone, Prozac. I'm not against any of those. I'm just saying do it with some awareness. Do it when if someone if you happen to have a therapist who's saying you should take this or take that, have a discussion about it. Don't necessarily just do what you're told based on somebody else's craziness. It'll be very rare for you to meet anybody. You with us?
Yes, I'm.
Good. It'll be very rare for you to meet anybody that is completely clear, that you can actually trust. You really need to trust yourself. I cannot emphasize that enough. And when I say that, I'm not saying believe your thoughts, because your thoughts are lies, every single one of them. When I say that, I mean that I'm saying every thought is partially true. And quite often we'll say, okay, I'll go with that. Well, I don't know really what's going on, so I'm just going to go, I need to do something. No, you don't. Don't do anything. Don't do anything unless you have to. You'll find that there's a whole lot of space can open up if you take the attitude, I'm not going to do anything unless I absolutely have to do it. Even meditate. Don't do it unless you have to. But if you have to, then you'll find that what you've just been doing has a very common name for it. It's called patience. Wait, please. Don't jump into things based on fear of holding still, or fear that you might miss the train. Yes, sir. Further questions? Yeah.
Did you say earlier that our wisdom minds made this happen
Yeah.
so that we can awaken?
Yeah.
What do you mean?
I mean, our wisdom minds made this happen.
How?
tools, hammers, nails, molecules, quarks. Material world is, there's all kinds of dimensions going on. This just happens to be one little thin layer that we're in as human beings, but it's the universe is endless. We've been everywhere. We've lived everywhere. We've lived on every planet. We've been everywhere. You just have amnesia about all that. At some point, you won't have amnesia about that. If you continue to look at the mind and see who this is, find out who this is. Find out who it is so you're absolutely certain of who you are. If you're not certain, then you don't know. You think you're somebody. So probably not hammers and nails, but just energy, sunlight. Very simple if you stop and think of what a strange situation we're in. We're living on this huge ball of dirt, I mean really big, in the middle of nowhere. And it's spinning, but we're not falling off. Who do we need to talk to about that? I mean, shouldn't it go the other way? Shouldn't we be on the inside of this so the spinning will cause us to walk on the inside of the earth? That's always bothered me. I intend to fix that in my next lifetime. So moving around this ball of dirt, moving around a much larger ball of fire, also in the middle of nowhere. And even more of those are all over swirling, called the Milky Way, or galaxy. And then there's all kinds of galaxies. This is just, we're really tiny little thinkers. Think, 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 think. Thinky, think, think, think. It doesn't make that noise, I know. But if it were a cartoon, that's what it would look like. Except for South Park, they wouldn't do that. More about that? No? Further questions? Yes, sir.
So earlier you said having an endpoint clouds our awareness. If enlightenment is the desired endpoint of, you know, discovering absolute truth, is that clouding our awareness?
Yes.
Is that conflict?
But if you practice enough, what practice does, it just breaks that down. It breaks that down. It doesn't break it down, you just see that everything comes apart. Anything that comes together is going to come apart. So enlightenment is not a state of mind. It could be, if you were to say anything about it, you would say it's no state of mind. It's no mind. This is even taught in the Zen tradition of no mind. Or everything is mind, which is the same thing. So all I'm trying to point out there is that if we settle on anything, we settle on something, then it quite often settles in form of a concept. And the concept of the idea, the thinking process, though the thinking process is a helpful tool if it's used with awareness, but quite often it wants to put awareness in the back of the bus, and it wants to drive because that's safer. We know where to turn, we know what's right, what's wrong, who we should follow, who we should believe. It's like, quite often we'll have a conversation with somebody and we'll talk about beliefs as if there's some kind of validity to a belief. A belief just means you think something is true with no proof. So, more? Did that make sense?
Yeah.
Darn, trying not to make sense. Yes, goes on.
As a practice,
Yes.
is it possible to be aware of a thought form that is not passion, aggression, or ignorance?
Yeah. Thoughts. The thoughts are just concepts or constructs. So yeah, it might just have to be very pragmatic situation. It's not pushing. It's not pulling. It's not shutting down. It's just functioning. It's just like functions just like a tree branch. It's awareness that has dropped down into a form, just like this table. This is why we do this practice. We don't do this sutras because we're worshiping somebody. We need a form so that we can see the emptiness of our thought patterns in our mind. This is why this is a non-theistic spiritual path. The theistic path, those are, if you need to do that, then your karma will take you right out of this room. You need to go to a theistic where there's some kind of someone to worship. This is not somebody to worship. This is a piece of wood with gold leaf on it. More?
If thought forms come up together with elation or depression, or there's any
Yeah.
change in relation to the thoughts, does that mean you're believing what's happening in the mind?
This never means that. So whatever happens never means something else. If you think this means that, this is called separation. This is called delusion. Don't do it. And when I say don't do it, what I'm saying is you have to see that you're doing it so you can see where it gets its fuel from, so that you can, with great simplicity, great delicacy, and great respect, you can snip that cord. I know that's probably not going to work. Thought there'd be a fancy way of saying it. Yes?
So if you're sitting on the cushion and there's a heavy emotion and a thought or a story that keeps playing
Yes.
over and over and over, is there a way to snip that?
No, you shouldn't be snipping that. If you're sitting and you have something that's playing over and over and over, you should just wait for the commercial. Don't do anything. Don't do anything with it. Anything that is happening, if you do nothing with it, then you see what it actually needs to do. It's a part of your life. Don't miss your life. Don't miss your life by a negative feeling or something coming up and trying to push that away. You need to have, how do we know? Because it's coming. That's how you know. Let the world come towards you. As Dogen said in the 13th century, when you go out towards the world with your ideas, your opinions, your mind, your contemplation of this, that, and the other thing, and your desire to make this happen or not make this happen, anytime you move out towards things, this is called delusion. When the world comes to you, when everything totally comes to you, this is the form of generosity that's often missed, is the world can't be generous unless you're really good at receiving. So you need to really receive the world. When you receive, this is awakening. But there's no longer anyone here. If there's someone here, then that receiver is going to need to do something. More?
Is there any way to encourage the attitude to find inspiration or elation to look at the shit that's arising on the cushion?
Well, I think that's what we do here. That's what I do. The two most important things about this kind of practice is sit down and face the wall, and then talk to me. Unless you don't want it, in case do something else. But if you're asking, then I'm saying, look at your own mind, what's happened, and then talk to somebody who's been doing that a long time that can help you. Who won't buy into your bullshit and will not take your intelligence away from you by getting you to do what they say, but someone that will respect you and work with you where you're at. Just like one of the extreme ways that is very difficult to discuss or talk about, but I can use that as an example. If somebody tells you they're going to kill themselves, do not interfere with that person. That may be none of your business. You may be doing more damage by coming in and trying to use your passion and your fear to come in and say, oh, don't do that. Very subtle area. You come into those kind of areas with your awareness rather than with your hope and fear or with your control mechanisms. Just because you have not had that issue come up and you see it coming up for somebody else, please respect that person. I mean, I'm not saying you shouldn't talk to them about it, but be very careful about trying to manipulate that person away from what there's a reason. When I say reason, there's a large dynamic behind why they're even telling you that. Very difficult to, I'm saying it in a way that may be hard to understand, but we don't really know the causes and conditions that are behind someone coming into life and actually having to deal with that kind of situation of suddenly just not wanting to be here and wanting to leave. Sheldon.
If you're receiving the myriad things, is that something that you do with your mind, or is that just something that happens at some point?
I would say that it happens from sitting down and being very aware and training your mind to watch what moves without doing anything about it. And if you hold very still, you'll notice, I know you've been meditating for years, if you sit down and watch, your mind, everyone's has a different thing going on. Some people's minds are very busy, very chattery, and I would say, don't worry about it. Sit there anyway. One of the ways you can work with that is there's 6 sense fields, including the mind. And usually the mind is the one that's trying to usurp everything else and take over and, you know, cause you to forget gravity, forget how your clothing feels, forget how your saliva tastes, forget how this incense smells. To just block everything else is called ignorance, and just focus on the crazy spinning thought patterns. Yes?
So, does that mean that just observing is receiving myriad things?
Yeah, if you're sitting here and the myriad thing, one of the myriad things, with a lowercase m, is coming up like this, and you're doing nothing with it, you're watching it, you're looking at it, it has really big ears, like this, you know, and you're watching it, and then you watch it, and you don't go after it, you don't give it a name, you do nothing with it, it just arises, and then you notice it kind of lumbers off. Or if it hangs around, then you watch it, because even something that hangs around does not hold still. If you meddle with that at all, if you go in and push on that, name it, push on it, do anything with it, then you actually perpetuate its so-called existence. It hangs around because it thinks just like you think it's something, it thinks it's something too. It's called duality. Yes.
So if you're naming it and touching it, you're actually going out to the myriad.
You are. And don't do that. You don't have to go out towards something you're not separate from. It's called not to. If you see in truth there isn't anything you're not that you're separate from in truth, then everything is allowed. This is kind of what I'm talking about the person who is suddenly so stressed that they want to end their life. Please don't meddle with them. Don't abandon them. I'm not saying that. But be very careful about any kind of advice. Get some really big ears. Listen. Ask very, very soft questions about what's going on. Yeah. We have a few minutes. Any other questions? Jigme.
You've used this analogy of a flower. How do we travel down the stem of the flower of depression? What does that look like?
Leave the flower alone. I mean, don't try to get rid of it by, my image there is about lopping off the head of something without really seeing what is happening down in the source. Allow the awareness to go down deep, and you can't do that if you get rid of it artificially. Oh, I got rid of that. This is what drugs do. They just cover up. And I'm not saying that you might not be so unhappy that you might not need drugs, but you should be the one who decides that. Not just some arbitrary person with a lot of letters after their name. And I'm not saying that people who are psychiatrists and therapists, and I'm highly, highly, highly supportive of all of those people for doing what they're doing. But they also should be careful. I'm saying be a psychiatrist, be a therapist, but be tentative about that. Try to receive as much as you can from that person before you step into there. Make sure you have permission from them, actual permission, not just because they've got insurance. I mean, actual permission from them. Right? Miss Therapist? Sir?
Would you find it plausible to say that people who are reluctant with the emotion of the experience of depression because they're impatient with the reward of happiness?
Yeah, it's probably said it better than I could. It's not a compliment.
Didn't take it as one.
I could tell, kind of. That shirt's really bright. I can't hardly see it. There's just kind of a glow over there.
Could you repeat what he said?
No, I can't. He can repeat it.
Could you repeat what you said louder so others can hear.
Oh, I don't remember what I said.
All right.
Would you say that people are reluctant with the emotion or experience of depression? Because earlier you had made the comment of impatience.
Yeah.
Would you say that people try and move away from this feeling of depression because they are impatient with the reward of happiness?
It's a little convoluted there, but somewhat. Yeah, they want to get out of there. They don't like it. They're not willing to actually go through what is there. I mean, who would be? It's painful. They're depressed. They feel bad. They want out of there. It's even sometimes mental pain, anguish is, you'd trade it out for physical pain any day. It's because it's so intense. And the physical pain, at least this is physical. I'll do this, but I don't want to do this mental stuff. Yes, go ahead.
But suffering from that depression is purely by choice, right?
No. Misunderstanding of choice. It's choiceless. You really don't have, we have very little choice. I often say, and I'll say it to you, I say, go, the next time you get a chance, go stand in front of a mirror give it 10 minutes. I'm not talking about a minute. Give it 10 minutes is nothing out of your life. I mean, it's just like a little sliver of time out of a week. Go and stand in front of the mirror and do nothing but just look at your image. And then at the end, take an index card with you and write something like, how much choice have I had so far? You'll see that you don't recall making any choices about how you look, being a human being. Do you remember that? When you decide, I think I might be a human being. No, I'm a frog. No, a human being. I like to jump. Well, maybe I could be a jumping human being. And I'm being silly, but I'm just saying that whole thing is just taken for granted that we're here and we have some kind of choice. Look at any time there's any kind of a choice or any kind of the illusion of choice, look at what that is, and you'll find that a little bit. To see that you have no choice actually, in a sense, liberates you to actually exercise what little choice you have. I'll tell you a really good choice for you. You want me to help you? Sit a lot. You're a young man. Give it the next 20 years. Sit every day for the next 20 years. And then come and see me. I might not be here, though.
Yes, you will.
Will I? Oh, okay. What she said. That's old, though.
It's okay.
That's really old. Did you follow me a little bit? I mean, a little bit. And when I say look in the mirror, I mean you can do whatever you want to do, but it is something you can do with a questioning kind of. And look at your eyes, your nose, how you look, how you appear. You can say, wouldn't I have done this a little differently if I did? Wouldn't I decide to be smarter? You're pretty good looking, so probably wouldn't worry too much about that. But maybe you would have rather been a chick. I couldn't help that, sorry. Yeah.
A chick?
Go ahead.
Baby chick?
Not a chick, yeah, a chick, a little chick. Yes.
It's just the explanations are so, there's so many paradoxes in it.
There are.
And that is part of the Enlightenment.
Yes, awareness of paradox and awareness of delusion is awakening. Awareness of enlightenment is impossible. You can only be aware of delusion. The awakening of the Buddha was a complete awareness of delusion. That was his awakening. It was not rainbows and unicorns. Did you raise your hand?
Scratch.
You scratched your eye, okay. You had another question here? No. Any other questions before we close? It's noon. Very good. Thank you so much.
Thank you. In the back of your blue chant books is the dedication of merit. And I would also encourage everybody, we do have donation boxes in the hallway for our temple as well as Sokuzan as a teacher, or you may go online and donate as well. Please help us.
May the merit
consciousness penetrate into all places so that we and every sentient being together can realize the Buddha's way. Ji-ho-san shi-shi-hu, shi-son bu-sa-mo-ko-sa. The three worlds, all Buddhas, all venerable ones, Bodhisattvas, Mahasattvas, the great Prajna Paramita.
O Buddhas and Bodhisattvas of the 10 directions, and 3 times please hear us. Please come down out of light and protect Sokukoji Buddhist Temple Monastery, our Sangha, families, friends, and visitors. Heal everyone who is unhappy, sick, or suffering, and fill them with light.